hate it when that happens. I wanted to sneeze. I'm going to talk about Justin Fields and the best quarterback you never heard of, and I'm still mad as hell I couldn't sneeze. Now it's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You got to help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about Justin Fields, and I want to talk about him in a different way because we're going to continue to talk about Justin Fields. We're going to continue to talk about the NFL draft. We're going to continue to talk about quarterbacks because quarterbacks drive the conversation, and there is no more important position on a team than quarterback, no matter what sport you want to look at. Because if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to be any good. And your quarterback doesn't actually do as much as a, say, basketball player like LeBron James, but you can tell who has a good one and who doesn't, based in part by how they play, especially when their team is not that good or not as good as the team that they're playing, or at least the defense that they're playing against. See, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I've been doing these stories for Fox Sports about some black college football players in our Black History Month package and project. I'm very proud of it. And I have a ton of, stories to tell you and books to tell you about that I'll get at a little bit later on as these stories continue to drip out. Been going about once a day. Had a story about the Kansas City Chiefs and how black they were in 1969. Had a story about Bob Hayes and Jake Gaither and FAMU football. And on Wednesday, had a story about Chuck Ealey. Now, if you're from the Toledo area or Ohio, you probably know Chuck Ealey's name, but the rest probably do not. Chuck Ealey is the best quarterback you never heard about. Okay? Now, the thing that I want to impress upon you is when people talk about quarterbacks and whether or not wins is a quarterback stat, you need to talk about it from the standpoint of, did that dude lose a bunch or did he win a bunch? Because Lincoln Riley takes into account quarterback wins as a stat. It's one of the ways in which he evaluates his prospects. And we can all agree that Lincoln Riley is a great evaluator of quarterbacks. All the dudes he chooses to run his football team end up being pretty doggone good, going all the way back to Shane Carden at East Carolina, right? He would say is the guy a winner because winning travels, okay? So coming out of high school, Chuck Ealey at Toledo went 30-0 at Notre Dame High School in Ohio, okay? The scholarship offer he got that was full was Toledo. He got a halfway offer to Miami of Ohio by Bo Schembechler, of all people, and he was going to say, hey, you're going to split time at defensive back as well as quarterback, and Chuck said, I'm a quarterback. Goes to Toledo, where they weren't exactly very good. They actually had a so-so record before he got there in the previous 3 years. And then with him as their starting quarterback, 1969, 1970, and 1971, they go 35-0, 3-0 in the Tangerine Bowl, beat Lou Holtz's William & Mary so badly 40-12 that Lou Holtz told anybody that would listen, Toledo can play with anybody in the country, including Ohio State and Texas. Texas, of course, played Arkansas for basically the national championship. And that's another story altogether, but 1969 national champ was Texas. So through his career, 4,800 yards passing and 865 yards rushing, back when those are still gaudy numbers, okay? You really got to take into account the style of play and how leery people were of throwing the football or having a quarterback take off and run with it as he was throwing it when you're evaluating Chuck Ealey. 42 career passing touchdowns, 12 career rushing touchdowns, first-team All-American, according to Football News, and a three-time All-Conference player. His rookie year, he played at the Canadian Football League, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and led them to a Grey Cup as a rookie. Now, you might ask that question, why was he playing the CFL if he was so good, RJ? It's a very good question. He went undrafted. Undrafted! In his draft-eligible year, there were 442 picks. Nobody picked him. Why? He came out and said, I'm going to play quarterback. I'm not considering playing any other position. At a time when black quarterbacks were routinely asked to play other positions in the NFL or in professional football. Ken Riley playing defensive back. Jim Kearney was asked to play running back. Like, we can keep going here. The first starting quarterback in the NFL who was black, Marlon Briscoe. Many of you know that. But the first starting quarterback to start a season, Buffalo Bills, James Shaq Harris, coming out of Grambling State. Chuck Ealey should have been the star, right? He should have been the next rising star, especially coming out of a football-rich state like Toledo. But they scrutinized his play so much that it became infuriating for folks that knew Chuck Ealey could play, not the least of which were the folks that were gassing him up while he was at Toledo and the guys that were responsible for keeping his stats while he was at Toledo. It's actually one of the quotes that I put in the story that I really love comes from their SID, right? Because their SID was told, his name's Max Gerber, that they thought Chuck Ealey couldn't throw the ball long, and he said, oh, he can't? All right. He threw 43 touchdown passes, and 23 of them were 40 yards or better. And they said that he can't throw it accurately. In 3 years, Chuck completed 54% of his passes. And at the time, only 11 quarterbacks in college football history had done better. So again, you got to take the percentages here. And that includes a hell of a lot of guys who became professional quarterbacks. Okay, 72 draft comes. They go through all their picks. Nobody drafts him. He says, okay, I'm going to play quarterback. Plays quarterback in the Canadian Football League and has an outstanding career there. But the way that we talk about Justin Fields is not unlike the way that we were talking about Chuck Ealey, okay? The same sort of tropes. He's a one-read quarterback. He doesn't look off his primary receiver. He throws most of his passes to his primary receiver. Oh! The same scrutiny does not go across the board to other quarterbacks, right? There were people that believed that Lamar Jackson should have been playing running back. Running back! After winning the Heisman Trophy at Louisville, they wanted to move him to running back in the NFL. He's only the second unanimous MVP ever, behind the guy that people love to say is the best player and the best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. And there's nothing special about Tom Brady except that his mind is special. And how come we don't give that same sort of thought to Justin Fields? Why don't we give that same sort of thought to Chuck Ealey? I mean, come on, guys, that's 50 years ago, right? And we're still having these conversations. These are the things that I really want people to think about when they are talking about quarterbacks, when they're talking about the NFL draft. The same level of scrutiny across the board. But I don't even think that you should be having these conversations in this way, because Ryan Day's not going to put a dude out there, but we could say that and we can continue to give you the stats. But I wanted to show you just how this conversation is not progressed. And we need it to, right? We got to get better at this. We really have to get better at this because the game's changing. The game continues to change. And yet we're still having the same stupid arguments about what these guys can't and can't do, even when we have tremendous amounts of data to show how good they are. Chuck Ealey went 65-0 through high school and college and went undrafted because he said he wanted to play quarterback? Justin Fields led his team to the college football playoff in 1 year and then led them to the national championship game in the next, and we're having discussions about whether or not he can read defenses? Are we actually doing that still? Food for thought. Deuces.